All right, let's get this interview going. So, welcome everybody. It is Monday, the 26th, and we're having our
27th. It's the 27th.
it's the 27th. Oops, that's kind
Time's
of embarrassing.
flying.
Okay, so welcome everybody to the interview, and we're glad to have you here, even in the interview and on YouTube. And I'm Kayla.
And I'm Stefan.
Awesome. Let's get this rolling.
Should I be introducing myself too? I'm Kanika.
Okay, so here's the overview of what's happening today. So we're gonna cut it short a little today, but it's always gonna be a great interview. We're starting at 4:05, which we're going on. Okay, and we're gonna start the interview at 4:10, interviewing our professional, and then if students have questions, you can go ahead and raise your hand and ask the question. We encourage you to ask questions because why not? And at 4:40, we're going to wrap up and have students write reflections, and we'll end the call at 4:45. And here are some of our generous sponsors who you should really take a look at because it's really hard now with Corona going on, and they'll need more help than you think. So, yeah. I don't know if I put the right words, but.
All right. In terms of meeting expectations, Rue's going to make sure that we keep to these. So we show gratitude and respect for all those in the video chat. You should be muted, and if you're not, oh yes, you are. When you want to be called on, just go ahead and raise your hand. So the way to find where to raise your hand is at the bottom. It says participants, and when you click that button at the bottom of that bar on the side, it'll say raise hand. So let's just practice that. Make sure that everybody knows how to raise your hand when you have a question. Awesome. Sweet, 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 sweet. Sounds great. Thank you. Go ahead and introduce yourself with your name and your pronoun if you are comfortable doing that before you ask your question. If you ask multiple questions, you don't have to do that every time, so just the first time. And then no nudity. Oh, sorry. No nudity, vulgar or demeaning language, or inappropriate sharing of your scheme or inappropriate background will be tolerated. So we really want to make sure that we're staying safe for you and you're staying safe for everybody else. So please abide by that. We do reserve the right to remove any individual from our programs. Screen names are only your first name, please. So let's just keep that on there. And then have fun. Stay engaged. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce Dr. Kanika Agrawal. She is a fantastic woman. I've had the pleasure of meeting her. She is a local in Portland right now, living amongst us here in this beautiful city. Holds a PhD in material science and engineering from the University of Michigan. Has authored multiple peer-reviewed journal articles in the field of electronic materials. If you don't know what peer-reviewed journals are, that's something we might be able to touch on today. A former process improvement engineer with Intel's Technology and Manufacturing Group. Former innovation consultant for a boutique firm facilitating business model design in early stage startups. So not just the large corporations, but small as well and starting up. Currently is a strategy and operations consultant with a focus on large scale organizational and digital transformation, so that technology focus. Clients are primarily high tech, energy, automotive industry, serves as an advisor for internal strategic initiatives and mergers and acquisitions at Hitachi. Again, if you don't know what mergers and acquisitions are, might be a good question to ask. Technology startup mentor here for some startups in Portland, and serves on the board of a local nonprofit called Unite Oregon Action. Before we finalize that introduction, make sure you have a notepad and a pen and pencil to write down your questions. Thank you so much, Dr. Kanika Agrawal, for joining us. We are so excited to have you.
Thank you for having me. This is very exciting. Can't wait to jump into it.
Go for it, Kayla.
Okay. So it's great that you're here. And if we missed something that you wanted to share about yourself, that would be a good time to do it. Your pronouns and just a little about yourself that you probably missed on the presentation.
Yeah, for sure. So my pronouns are she, her, hers. And I was just telling Stefan and Kayla about my background before everybody joined, but I'm a big fan of Liverpool Football Club, which is a an English Premier League soccer team, and I was going to go to England this week to watch them play in London. And that's all, fell apart with the coronavirus. So, but that's why I'm getting to do this, because I wouldn't have been able to do it. But that's why I'm in this locker room here to simulate that. But yeah, I live in Northeast Portland with my partner and my 2 pets. My cat is here in my office with me, so if he pops up on the screen, you'll see him. I hope he's not too much of a distraction. And other than that, yeah, let's just jump right into it, and feel free to ask me whatever you like.
Great. Well, I have a first question, if that's okay, Kayla.
Yeah.
So, in touching base with Kayla before this, we talked about the idea of being a doctor versus a high school student. There's a lot of space in between years, lots of writing, lots of reading. I'm most curious about that journey. And I know that the students probably have questions about specific parts of that journey, but just kind of giving us a snapshot of that overall journey. What were the parts that you felt the most enthusiastic about? Maybe that stands out to you more.
Yeah, good question. There's, I think for me specifically, getting a PhD was a decision that was based on many factors. It wasn't necessarily that I had this like really clear vision that this is like what I wanted to study, but so for a little bit of background, I grew up in India and I've been in the States for about 10 years now. So I went to college in India. That's where I got my undergraduate degree. And that was in engineering, which honestly, like that's the default for a lot of people that go to college in India. So I feel like it was not as conscious of a decision as it could have been. I did love science, so it ended up making sense. But when I applied to grad schools in the States, I originally applied for a master's program because it's a shorter commitment, feels more manageable, a year and a half to a couple of years. So that's what I'd originally done. But then once I got to the University of Michigan and kind of got more exposed to what kind of research was going on and got to meet some professors, I decided to make that switch and continue for an additional 3 years and get my PhD. But what I will say is a huge part of that decision was the appeal that I didn't have to pay any tuition because PhDs are funded and I got a stipend. So it was almost like having a job right out of undergrad, and I was getting a doctorate degree in the process. So, I mean, coming out of, 10 years of school with no debt and a doctorate from a really good university, it felt really good. And I mean, I don't think that that's a good enough reason to go get a PhD, because the amount of perseverance it takes to get through those 5 years can be pretty hard if you're not mentally prepared for it. But it is a pretty appealing reason, I will say. But as far as the highlights, I think for the kind of field that I was in for my PhD, there was a lot of experimentation, like actual lab experiments, mixing things, making things, and a lot of trial and error. So I'd say like 80% of the time nothing worked, but when things did work, it was just amazing. That was like one of the best feelings, and I really miss that about doing research. Like when it actually works, it's super cool.
Absolutely. It's almost like the idea around Thomas Edison, like the thousandth try, like he's got this light bulb, but
yeah,
it was no. Finally, like it was worth it to actually keep going through all of that for you.
Yeah, definitely.
Wow.
Yes. So you talked about going to like school in like India. Am I right about that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So like I'm curious, like is the system, like learning system, like weird, like different from the United States, and just how you like learn and all that? Is it like sitting in a classroom and getting lectured at, or just working in a lab, or like that? That's my question.
Yeah, that's a really good question. It's super different. It's not similar at all to going to college here. It can vary depending on where you go to school. In India, there are a lot of universities, and only a handful of them are very good. And I actually didn't have the grades out of high school to go to one of the very good ones, so I went to one of the very okay ones. And um, it's a lot of rote memorization. Even if you don't go to a single class, you can still pass the exam with flying colors if you're really good at memorizing things, which sucks because it doesn't actually test how you apply knowledge. We did have things that we did like in a hands-on manner in labs, but I mean, I just have to say it's all very like prescriptive. You just follow the script, and the better you are at following instructions and memorizing things, the better you can do. So I wasn't super engaged. I didn't go to a lot of like classes, and but fortunately, I'm really good at memorizing things. And I was actually really nervous when I started grad school, and I went to Michigan. And I mean, even the undergrads there, kids who were like, not freshmen, but definitely sophomores and juniors, a lot of them knew more than I did. I mean, I was really far behind. It took me a long time to catch up, and it was really nerve-wracking at first. Like my first semester, I felt like I was going to fail out of every single class I took. And I also like took 3 jobs along with that because I was like nervous about money stuff. So it was a lot. It was, but it turned out fine.
Well, so you talked a little bit about there's a lot going on in college. Like obviously you have 3 jobs, and like there's this whole like not just transition in education to like masters, but you're in a completely different country at this point.
Yeah.
And you also mentioned about the mental preparedness. I'm very curious as to what that looks like in retrospect for you, what you had to prepare yourself to do that maybe you weren't prepared for.
Yeah, I mean, I think the cultural shift, you'd be surprised it's not that large because India has become really like westernized, and I was watching like a lot of, American TV shows and things like that. So the culture shock, it wasn't that much. Like I knew kind of what I was getting into. But I think the biggest thing that I wasn't expecting was just like navigating all of the little things. It really takes a while to like get on the same page as far as like niceties go, like what you say when you meet somebody, and how like all the doors work, and how like different things like that work. It's all different. So that was one piece. Like grocery stores, how do you navigate it? Like everybody seems to know what they're doing, and when you're from another country, you're kind of like, okay, I have to like figure this out. So every new thing that you encounter is like something that you figure out. Like when you go to Subway and you don't necessarily like know how to order, like that's something you have to like kind of figure out.
Like, do I have to start with the bread first and then figure this out? And you have to ask me questions. We have this dialogue. It's a very, we have a weird culture here. I do have to admit, it's very strange.
Yeah, because we have Subways and Chipotles in India, but we just like pick something off a menu and then they just give it to you. You don't like have all these choices. So that was interesting to navigate. But as far as school goes, one of the things, so I was, one of my jobs was I was a grader. And I think even within that, there was some coming up to speed for me to do because, I mean, colleges and universities in the States don't necessarily grade like we did in India. There's a different kind of rubric and thinking about it. You don't just want to award somebody points for only the right answer, but there's like more to it and the approach and the thought. So, but one of my other jobs was actually much more interesting. I was a student police at the Michigan Stadium. So I was like at the turnstiles checking bags and making sure people weren't bringing in things that weren't allowed. And so just like this girl from India goes straight to like, deal with all these drunk people at the stadium. So that was fun.
This is Ann Arbor, University of Michigan football.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to picture all this. Wow.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. That's crazy.
So, yeah, it was like 100,000 people every game. It's the biggest stadium in the States.
Wow.
It's the bowl, right? It's the full-on bowl.
Mm-hmm.
Oh
Yeah.
my gosh. Oh my gosh.
So
yeah,
when I saw the job posting, when I saw the job posting on the student boards, it was like, free lunch and paid something, I don't know. And I was like, okay. And the biggest requirement was you can't be into football, because if you are, then you're going to want to go to the games. So that was the most important prerequisite. And I was like, I don't know anything about football, so this sounds perfect.
Go for it, Kayla. Sorry.
Okay, yeah. Like, since we're talking about jobs and stuff, like how you like worked, well, a lot of the students are looking for jobs like sooner or later, or even now, and like, what would be a good thing to put on your resume and why? That's the question.
Like a good thing to have on your resume.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think that's really like contextual, depending on what type of job you're going after. But something that's really easy, that helps you get a foot in the door, I think, when you don't have any experience, is just some kind of certification in the field that you're trying to go after. And that's something that even I had to do so my job out of grad school at Intel was very directly related to what I studied. So that was a very like easy job for me to get, relatively speaking. But after that, when I made the transition to consulting and business, that was kind of a hard switch, because people were like, you have a PhD in engineering, what do you know about business, or why do you want to do this? Like so getting like a certification in, say, project management or whatever it is that you want to do, which it's maybe like a month or a month and a half of studying, and then you take an exam. It's a really good way to get a foot in the door and show that I actually like, care about this thing, and I've done some work towards it.
So the certifications, I'm familiar with like Khan Academy and stuff. Is that something that would be like a certification, or are there other websites that you might know of or recommend?
Yeah, so there's a lot of websites like that now. So LinkedIn has something called lynda.com, which is a really great learning platform, and they issue certificates. There's Udemy, there's Coursera, and then a lot of universities also just do certificate programs, which can be a little bit more on the expensive side. But like my partner, I know she did Cornell's like marketing certificate or something.
Oh, interesting.
And it was a little bit more expensive. It was, I think, a couple of $1,000, but you get that like brand name attached to yourself, and then you also get to show that you have experience in this thing, which if you're like what you've done in the past isn't related to that, it's a good way to show that you do know something about it.
Cool. That's a good point. It's interesting. I took a course in person here, but I haven't really explored a lot of that online stuff. So I feel like students may be even more privy or have that availability to do that. And now that we're being required to work and kind of school at home, that might be an interesting avenue for students to take in this era. I mean, can anybody take it even under 18? Do you know of that restriction or anything?
Some courses do have like prerequisites, certain number of hours of study or, experience or whatever, but a lot of them don't. A lot of like just the online learning courses, like if you wanted to take a coding course on like C++, that won't have any prerequisites or anything.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, thank you.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So like, we're talking about like college and stuff, but like, I'm still curious with what you actually do for like a living as a job, because we know that you like, a doctor, but what is it like? Yeah.
So I mean, it's very far from what you would expect a doctor to do. So I'm one, I'm definitely not a medical doctor. So if you're ever in trouble, do not call me. I cannot help you. And what I do now is also actually really far from what I studied. So I studied engineering and did a lot of like science and research. And what I do now is entirely business. So I work for a technology company, which I think is the only connection. But the work that I do is, it falls into this bucket we call corporate strategy and business operations. So what that means is it's kind of if you think about like what a company does, they have goals each year in terms of how much money they want to make and how profitable they want to be. And they have a plan of how they're going to do that. So which products do they want to prioritize in a certain year and take to market? What are the market conditions looking like? So, one of the things right now with COVID-19 is we serve a lot of industries that are seeing a downturn because of COVID-19. So like the car industry, automotive is a big client for us, and they're shutting down a lot of their operations. So we're trying to, one of the like strategy things we're trying to do is what can we sell that is relevant to this industry still. So, or to maybe to even another industry. So when workers start to come back on site into plants, one of the things most companies are going to want to do is detect their temperature and make sure they're not sick. So some of our technology around thermal cameras can be used to do that kind of detection, and then in real time, like display on a board that you're sick, you have a high temperature, like you need to go home. So that's kind of what a strategy role involves, like adapting to what's happening in the market. And, given all the changes, how can we still achieve our financial targets?
So yeah, what I'm hearing is like basically you're managing the marketing side of the business, or is it like it's a general whole thing where you're managing the customers and then the product itself and then the operations behind the scene kind of thing? Is that like what you're doing, like overall the whole thing? Or do you get assigned a specific part of the business part of your job?
Yeah.
That's
a really good question. So I think if I was in a smaller company, I'll probably be doing all of those, but I work at a very big company. So there's a lot of people doing a lot of things, and often they're doing the same thing, which sucks. But so our company has, so I work for a sister company of Hitachi. So Hitachi itself is ginormous. Our company is Hitachi Vantara, and we have right about 12,000 people. So it's a pretty big company. So we have, a marketing department, and I'm not part of the marketing department. So those guys look at a lot of like how we should present our brand and how we should kind of package our solutions. How do we tell a story that customers can relate to? And they also look at like market dynamics and market intelligence. But the group that I am in approaches it more from the perspective of how can the company meet its goals, rather than from the very like customer specific lens of how do we sell something. So it's kind of the broader picture of what do we sell, but then also how do we sell it, and what do our internal operations need to look like to enable all of that. So there are a lot of roles. There's a finance department, there are, sales teams, there are just all kinds of people. If you can think of a role, there's probably 50 people doing it.
Wow. So let's take I love the rewinding, because where you're at now, it took a lot to get there. Put yourself in the role of a high school student again, and you don't have all this job experience. You don't really know what it looks like to work potentially on a team, potentially besides playing field hockey or maybe a team project. What are some of the biggest skills that you think that you've had to like really hone in on that have gotten you to the point to where you can work collaboratively on this kind of a scale?
Such a good question. I like that. Yeah, when I think back to being in high school and just having started college, I think one of the biggest things that helps when you're working with teams is just the ability to kind of read the room and read people. And I mean, I don't consider myself an extrovert, and I don't think that you have to be one to be a good people person. But having like people skills where you can kind of read between the lines and kind of, you know, read nonverbal cues and things like that, it really helps in a collaborative setting. And even if you're working with a virtual team, because yeah, I think being able to like build trust and portray yourself in a way that people trust you is just super important. Otherwise, it's just a mechanical process and everybody's kind of doing their own thing and you're not connected as a team.
I think that like socializing and just is really important. Like the last few interviews I've done, everyone has mentioned the like part of networking and getting to like get information from other people and that. So in college, did you do any like activities on campus that like were you in clubs or like things like that made like helped you get through college with getting information about like jobs and stuff like that?
Yeah, I did quite a bit of that kind of stuff. So we had a bunch of different things at my college. We had like a few different technical societies, and that, like, you know, you would join one based on very much like what your like skill set was. So I was in one that was specific to electrical engineering, but then we also had other things that were not at all specific to like what we were studying. We just had these college festivals, as they're called in India, where it's just a big party pretty much. And, you know, I was on the organizing committee for those, and all of that kind of stuff helps. And then we had like a college newspaper, and, you know, I would write for that once in a while. So very different like structure, I think, of what college looks like in India. It was also a lot smaller than what you would, probably the size of like a community college, if not even smaller than that. But yeah, so a little bit different, but all of that kind of stuff helps for sure.
Yeah, did you ever like do any internships? Because I know that a lot of people just do internships so then they gain experience going into another job or putting it on their resume for their future job or something like that. Did you ever do any of that?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
I did. Yeah, there's a couple of internships, and I think those were what really helped me get into the grad school that I went to, because like I said, a lot of the curriculum was really like rote memorization, and I feel like it wasn't adding value to me. So I kind of went off and tried to find research projects at other like universities and things that I could work on that would make me look like a better candidate when I applied for grad school.
So there's a lot of experience that you have, kind of from like a diversity of wealth in terms of where you plugged in. Can you speak to that diversity of experiences and why you think it's important or maybe not important?
Yeah. No, I think it's super important to be a well-rounded person in general, because there's nothing wrong with being really deep in one area. I think that if you are super passionate about something, you know that that's like the thing for you, you can just be a heads down like researcher who doesn't interact with anybody and, you know, does their experiments and goes home and kind of, but if you do want to be in a role that is broad, where you interact with people from a lot of different teams, that like, you know, if I was talking to somebody that was from like a marketing and communications background, and I was using a lot of technical jargon, they wouldn't have any idea what I was talking about. And so a lot of people that I work with, like engineers, they do talk in that way, and they don't know how to talk in any other way. So I think that's where like the diversity of experiences, like being on sports teams and doing things outside of like classes, really helps, because you're meeting people that are from different kinds of backgrounds and interests, and it helps you be able to craft a message in a way that would make sense based on who that person is and where they're coming from, as opposed to just whatever you know.
It's almost like jumping back to, helps you just wrote down what you said, ability to read the room and like to understand people, almost empathize and just connect on that level to build the trust to work together in that sense.
Definitely. Yeah. And also just, I think, right out of grad school, I was working on the startup for a little while. And one of the things that we had to do was we had to take the stuff that we developed in our research and communicate it to just anybody, a layperson, about what this thing did and why it's important. And, that's something that we really struggle with, because in our day-to-day, we're writing papers and we're doing all this stuff, and we're just used to speaking in a certain way and with all these words that nobody knows. So just that process of like converting it into something that's meaningful to everybody, I think that's where diverse experiences add a lot of value.
Absolutely. So we are winding down. I have a couple more. I have one question. Kayla's got one question. So to take this diverse experiences, you've worked with all these people. Now you're in this job that you have a lot of different moving parts. Do you believe that you're making the impact that you want to be making?
Ooh, good question. I think I'm some of the way there, but definitely have, a long way to go. I definitely, identify with kind of the mission and values of the company that I work at, which makes it, much easier to be there. And I think it'd be like pretty disappointing if that wasn't the case. So one of the things I also try to do in my role is push the company more towards being the kind of company that I want to be at. So, just taking the COVID-19 thing as an example again, we're doing a few things there, and I'm trying to come up with ideas of my own that we can take up as a company, that we can like go after, because we are really uniquely positioned, being such a massive company with like manufacturing lines and the ability to make ventilators and masks. And so it is cool to be able to be somewhere that can do that, but also with being at a big company, there are a lot of people, so you can start to feel kind of detached from whatever it is that this place is or what it means. So I think, in terms of impact, like I said, I also try to do things just outside of work, because I think it's with the type, I am in a corporate job, that there's only so much fulfillment you can get out of, what you do at work. So that's why I'm engaged with Unite Oregon Action and kind of do all that type of stuff. And eventually maybe I'll be in a job that has all of those aspects within it. But for now, this is kind of how it is.
Thank you.
That's cool. So obviously from the start, the vision wasn't clear for you, but now that ending up into a big company like this and just moving from like business, engineering, all of that, going back and forth and like that, you're just talking about your job and how you want this big vision for the company. What makes you so passionate about what you do? That's my kind of question for you.
I think it ties into what Stefan was asking about, like the opportunity to make an impact at that level within the organization and kind of more broadly is what excites me. But I think, I don't know how many people you guys have talked to and how many more you're planning on talking to, but I may be different in that I'm not, maybe this will like come across as disappointing, but I'm not a super like passionate person. I feel like if I was, I probably would have like picked one thing right out of high school and I'd still be doing that and be like after it. But I'm very much, I feel like I'm still discovering myself, and my interests change every now and then, and I'm not laser focused in one direction. I think the common theme is I want to be in roles where I can make an impact. So that was one of the reasons I left my job at Intel. It's a great job that a lot of my friends are still at, and they love it, and they're super passionate about, making things and making semiconductors. But I just felt like there were so many people doing the same thing that I was doing that I just didn't feel like I was able to set myself apart in any way. So I think for me as a person, that's really important, and it is almost like a passion. It's kind of like a passion of mine to be in a role where I feel like I'm uniquely contributing in some way.
Yeah, I feel the same way. Like with joining Passion Impact and stuff, I feel like rather than just going to club meetings, I rather help just be a part of it, because I believe that this would be big someday. So that's why I'm taking a step to do all these things, even though it makes me uncomfortable sometimes, And yeah, thank you for answering that. That was awesome. And for those who are interested in help facilitating things like this with me, just always message me or just come in contact, email Passion Impact, all of that stuff. And yeah, handing it over to Stefan.
So as we wrap this up, Kanika, thank you very much. For those of us on the line here, can you just write a couple thoughts about what you got away from today? What did you learn from this interview that you're excited about? How can you use this information moving forward? And if there's anything that Passion Impact can do to make this better for you, please let us know. So with that, I'm curious. Kayla asked for it in the beginning. I'd love to know. Go for it, Kayla. I'll let you ask it because you're excited about it.
So what's the joke? The final joke.
Oh my gosh, I forgot to prep for that one.
That's a good joke. I like that's a good start.
So like I was saying, I think my previous job was much more like primed for jokes. So not so much a joke, but maybe just informational. It's kind of funny. But you work in what's called a clean room. So it's this place that's the size of like 10 or 15 football fields. Some of them are even larger than that. And it's full of machines, and this like, if you've never like seen even pictures of one, it might seem insane because they're like these little carriers that are moving all around on the ceiling, and everything is automated. And then since it's a clean room, what that means is that the amount of particles in the air is really low because the stuff that we're making is super delicate, so nothing can get on them. So one of the things you have to do before you go in is you have to wear a full suit. So we call it a bunny suit. And it's a full like mask, it's booties, 2 sets of gloves, goggles, there's a hood. And so it's a very elaborate like get up. So yeah, I mean, I guess my joke is I was never on time. We had a 7 a.m. meeting every single morning, and I just simply could not make it because I never like budgeted enough time to put all that stuff on and walk through that giant factory to like get to the spot where the meeting was. So I was always chronically late. So don't be like me. That's the joke.
That was a great joke.
And as you finish up your writing, y'all go ahead and send it in. I'm just going to remind you as to what's happening over this next week. We, of course, have parent support days on Monday.
I lost your audio there, Stefan. I can't really hear you.
You're kind of muffled. No.
Is better?
Kind of.
How about now? Okay, real quick, because I know that you have to go. We got parent support on Mondays, translating documentation, promotional stuff for the May informational interviews. We love have as many languages as possible, specifically Cantonese, Russian, Vietnamese, Spanish. Spanish is almost done, thanks to Danya. Article discussions on Tuesdays from 12 to 1. Workouts with Kayla and Christina from 12 to 1 on Wednesdays. Kicks your butt. Enjoy that one. This Wednesday specifically coming up from 4 to 5, we're going to be interviewing Kim Izod, who's a nurse in Darwin, Australia, and Dr. Marcos Villarreal in Austin, Texas. On Thursdays, we have a connector communication team. So if you want to join that, I think we got 1 spot left. And then on Fridays, games with Marion Allen. Last but not least, if you are interested in more informational interviews and want to tell us who we should interview, take this survey, please. And you have a chance to win a $25 gift card to either Grubhub, Dutch Bros, or Netflix. closes on May 10th. Quick things here. Danya said, I can use this information moving forward by understanding the many cool stuff she has to work with. Awesome, Danya. Kayla learned that there is not just one type, there's multiple types of doctors, not one's just in hospitals. So thank you. I learned a lot about field hockey. I learned a lot about the process of coming from India here and the different types of education and how do you have to interact with that. That it's not just about finding your passion at one spot and sticking with it. You can always continue to learn. So with that, thank you very much, Dr. Kanika Agrawal.
Thank you.
We really appreciate
Thank you.
and if there's ever a chance that you're able to come back and chat with us, we'd love to have you, especially when Kayla is doing the late night with Kayla's show.
And I will know more about field hockey.
Yeah, you should check out some videos.
Yes.
All right, everybody, let's give her a yippee and hoot and holler however you want. Thank you so
Thanks,
much.
everyone.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank
Hope
you.
this was helpful.
All right, take care.
All right. Bye.